Uh, the thing that has rankled fantasy Twitter for the last few days now. Antonio Brown is eligible to come off of suspension, and there are reports that the Seahawks had an interest in signing him. Then, a couple days after that, came news that the Ravens were planning to sign Des Bryant to their practice squad. So it is a flashback of one time fantasy stud receivers coming back into our lives, and that has sent fantasy Twitter into a tizzy. Do you have any interest in either one of these or both of these guys right now?
I have no interest in Des Bryant. I think he is much more of a good story, something to root for. Like, I hope we get to see him back because, he was a fun player to watch, but he was someone who dealt with a lot of foot injuries and I thought was heavily declining when he was, with the Cowboys. And we haven't seen him in the NFL in years. And again, he's only on the practice squad here. And if they call him up, I think he's third target at best. But Antonio Brown, I mean, I'm always a sucker for upside, and AB 2 years ago was still one of the best wide receivers in football. I don't really expect that, and I think one caveat that isn't getting enough attention, unless they can start the COVID testing early, like if he can't sign till after week 8, does he still have to wait, the whole week like Le'Veon Bell had to and other players who've signed had to? Because then at that point, then we're probably talking about week 9, he's only starting practice. How quickly is he going to be acclimated into the system? I would expect him to just be like more of a gadget player, a couple targets a game, maybe stretch the field or something like that. But I think he is more valuable in name. Like if you can grab him now and anyone wants to offer you something, or if he does sign, you trade him then. But I think he's better as a value as name trying to trade him than he is contributing to your fantasy team.
And I think that's sort of the big part for me is that it really is more about the fact that there's buzz around him at this point, right? And that there are people who have interest. So maybe if you were able to pick him up off the waiver wire, or if you somehow drafted and stashed him all this time, I think there's a chance for you to kind of get something of value. I do worry about, you mentioned the COVID testing and having to wait and when he gets into practice. There's also the fact that there's still another investigation hanging over him as well. And there's still a chance that he could be suspended by the league for that. So we really don't completely know what his playing status is going to be. And I know what's funny to me is that the Seahawks right now have two of the biggest wish casted wide receivers in fantasy football, with this talk of them maybe signing Antonio Brown, the fact that they're still waiting for Josh Gordon, right? I mean, Josh Gordon is still kind of hanging around, and they're trying to see if he could ever be reinstated. The Seahawks are just kind of dangling these two guys out there, and fantasy Twitter is sort of just kind of like drooling over what possibly could be. The other part of this that sort of concerns me is, look, right now things are pretty good with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in this offense. And while Antonio Brown makes this Seahawks offense better as a whole, I mean, how worried would you be if you have, say, DK Metcalf and Antonio Brown comes in and starts, having to get targets? That would concern me a whole lot.
Yeah, it wouldn't be great. Like he would take targets away from those two. I don't think there's a world where they would sign AB, deal with all the off the field stuff, like you said, and then not use him. Like that just doesn't make any sense at all. So yeah, he is a threat to the target, a bigger threat than Josh Gordon, a bigger threat than anyone on their roster for targets from those two. So I as someone who has Lockett and DK on a few of my rosters, like I do not want them to sign him selfishly.
Yeah, I have stayed away from Antonio Brown. I guess, look, if I were in a situation where I had a team that was 5-1, 6-0, whatever, and I had the roster space, maybe I consider it. But I think there are far more unknowns and negatives than there is upside. So I have personally stayed away, but I know that a lot of folks have certainly dived right in. So
Yeah, he
I will
was
stay hands off. Go ahead.
most added wide receiver this week on NFL.com.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay hands off. And look, if he comes back and he's great, then hey, I'll just take the L on that one. But I just don't want the headache there.